guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is all about the notebooks that I actually use. I think that I've been putting off doing this because, well, one, because things have changed a lot in terms of what I actually use kind of on a daily basis and on a weekly basis, and two, because of those changes, I am a little embarrassed that I do have some notebooks that I have and I don't really use that much. So I'm gonna go through and I wanna show you guys what I actually use, you know, for example, during my morning routine and on like a weekly or a monthly basis. And then I'll show you some of the notebooks that exist, but that I don't use as much. And I think that, you know, I've been putting off doing this video, but I did want to actually do it because I think a lot of people think that I've got like 17,000 notebooks that I'm using like every single day, and oh my gosh, how does she keep up with it? And that's just not true. I definitely have a couple of notebooks that I use a lot. They have, you know, very specific purposes, and so I just wanted to kind of walk you guys through my system, and you guys can see sort of what this actually looks like on a day-to-day basis for me. So, how shall we organize this? You know what, let's start with what I do for my morning routine. And so this actually, I'm gonna kind of say this is morning routine, but I'll explain what it means. So every morning when I wake up, I have kind of a little routine of things that I do. So for example, you know, I get up and I'll come out and I'll make coffee, and then I sit at my kitchen table and I will journal and do my some lines a day. Now, a lot of times I try to do my some lines a day in the evening before I go to bed, but I'm kind of counting this as my morning routine because it does fluctuate. For example, today, I actually did my some lines a day in the morning. So these are the two notebooks that I use for that. I have my Some Lines a Day book, which I do use the LUECHTTURM version. I've got the black one with like the green accents. And I started this January of 2018. So this is, I'm currently filming this on August 20th, but I don't know when you guys will actually see this. So as of now, I've got, you know, a year and 2/3 filled up in this. And I am pretty good about doing this every single day. When I go on longer trips, I actually will sometimes bring this with me. If I'm going on a shorter trip and or I'm packing a lot lighter, I will usually take a section of a different notebook and I'll make a space to kind of jot some notes down, and then I'll fill this in when I get back. So this is either an evening routine or a morning routine thing, but I do use this every single day. And if you guys haven't really seen inside, it's not a lot of writing that you're gonna do every single day, so it goes by pretty quickly. It's literally like 5 minutes. The other thing is my journal. So I'm currently in a DINGBATS notebook. For a while back in April, I was actually, so I think April through July, I was actually using a little Moleskin, like one of the little cahiers, so like the stitch, like soft cover ones. I was using that because I started it while I was on a trip and I just kind of finished it through, and then I went back into here. So I've actually been using this journal. It was originally a morning pages notebook, but it's now just kind of a general journal, but I tend to write in the morning, so, you know. I started it in May of 2018, and I'm about, what, like almost halfway through, maybe a little bit more than a third. And I just write a little bit every day. Some days I write a full page, some days I write 2 pages, some days I write just a little bit. When I'm at home, I tend to alternate with fountain pen, just to use my fountain pens, but if I'm on a trip, for example, and I do bring this, I just use like a black gel pen. So I do try and write every single day. For the past couple of months, it's been one of my like intentions for the month, so I actually have been writing at least a little bit every single day. Prior to that, it was, you know, once every couple of weeks or whatever, so that's why this journal has lasted so long, because I'm not always good about writing a lot, and I'm not always good about writing every day. So what I've been kind of trying to do is, rather than worrying about how much I'm writing, I'm worrying more, did I actually take the time to sit down and get some thoughts down every single day? So that's been going pretty well. The other thing that I use every single day, obviously, is my bullet journal. So I have my bullet journal in this CHOOSETODO notebook cover that I've had for a little while. It's actually starting to get a lot of transfer. I'm not sure how well that's gonna come up on camera, but it's getting a lot of transfer because I use this, I basically like leave this open on my desk. I do have a couple of things in the pockets over here. I've got a mini stencil, I've got like blotting paper for if I ever write in fountain pen in here, which I don't do often. I have my everyday writer over here. This is actually a HI-TEC-C, so a Pilot HI-TEC-C, and it's a 0.3 point. So I just kind of leave that. So because I've been filming today, I actually kind of closed things up, but normally this is open on my daily with my pen and my stencil, like just on my desk kind of thing. So I do leave this out. And I've been using the official bullet journal. So this is actually the Stealth. So it's got the like black edges to the pages. And I started this in January of 2018 and it is currently August and I'm on page, let's see, 183. So I might actually get the entire calendar year in this notebook. So yeah, so that is definitely a notebook that I use every single day. The other one is my Projo. So you guys will have seen these, both of these, my bullet journal and my Projo in my Plan With Me's. I do use them every single day. So I have the deluxe cover of the Projo, which is recycled leather. And then inside I've got my, my P book and my N book. And so I don't always have my Projo open because I use this a lot when I'm doing my monthly planning and my weekly planning. So basically what I'll do is as I'm sitting down and thinking about what I want to get done, I do my monthly planning. And then usually on Sunday or Monday morning, I'll sit down and I'll kind of think about what are my kind of projects for the week. So that's when I'll fill out this top section that's got my key projects and then any other little things that come up. I'll put in any sort of specific things in the weekly section. This week I actually don't really have a whole lot because I'm still on vacation, but because I use Google Calendar, I tend to leave the majority of this blank and I fill it in so that I have a record of how I used my time, but I'll fill it, whoops, I'm losing papers, but I'll fill it in kind of later on in the week. So this is one that I don't necessarily keep open all the time, but what I will do is when I'm sitting and thinking about what I want to do for the next day, I'll look at what my goals for the week are and pull one or two of them to work on that day. So I do keep it on my desk, it's just not necessarily always open. The other thing I have is, for example, it is the end of the summer and so I'm working on getting stuff ready for back to work. So for example, I have this spread of just what I want to prepare for lessons and all that kind of stuff. So when I'm working on my lesson planning, a lot of times I'll have this page open. So any of like the collections I have that are for whatever I'm working on, I will sometimes open those up. So that is my Projo. And let's see, so I've got two others that I use on a more regular basis. I have this is a B6 cover. It is also from CHOOSETODO, and this is from their B6 collection are kind of all fall themed, but they actually are based on the Hogwarts houses. So I am Ravenclaw, which means I got the navy blue with the bronze hollow on the inside, and I actually use this as my language notebooks, or to house my language notebooks. So I've got my language log over here, which is where I keep up to date with what I do in terms of language study. You'll notice that August has not been super productive. I was gone for the first like week and a half, and I'm also just kind of taking a break, but I do keep that in there. That's also where I do any journaling in foreign languages. And then the other one is my little Nuna, and that is where I keep my Talk to Me in Korean notes. So I actually keep my language logbook in here pretty much at all times because I can just open it up and fill it in. When I'm doing Talk to Me in Korean lessons, I actually will take this notebook out just because it's easier for me to write in, but this just kind of keeps this whole section together. I've got the pen that I use specifically in my language log, and then when I'm not using it, I can just very easily put it on my shelf. So this just kind of keeps these two things together. And then the last thing that I don't use all the time, but that I do use is my collection bullet journal. Now this is probably the one that has sort of the biggest shift in how much I use it since I started bullet journaling. So I used to have a lot of really long-term collections, so things like books I wanted to read, TV shows I wanted to watch, movies I wanted to see, and my reading challenges. So over time, I actually also had, for example, like a 4-year overview, like goal setting and that kind of stuff. But since I have sort of shifted how I do my goal setting over time, and I've also realized that a lot of the things that were on my to be read list from like 5 years ago are maybe not things that I'm going to read. I've kind of wiped the slate clean, if you will, and I really use my collection bullet journal right now for two things. So the first is actually three things, if you will. So the first thing is my reading challenge for the year. So for 2019, I did a little intro page saying how many books I wanted to read, and I had a couple that I wanted to read in foreign languages, so I just did kind of my my goal stats for the year, if you will. Then I also have my just basic tracker. I've done this for 3 years. So wait, 16, 17, 18. No, this is my 4th year doing it. So starting in 2016, I had a tracker that looked pretty much identical to this. And it's just for me, I do use Goodreads. So I do have a running list of all the books that I've read and then all the books that I've read for each year. But I like kind of having the year at a glance because it's much easier for me to look at this and kind of see an overview than it is to try and scroll through on Goodreads. So it doesn't take very long because all I write down is what number of books. So, is it the first, second, third, etc. books? So I know how many books I've read. I write what week I read it in. So I don't really care about the end date, but I do like to see if there are times where, this one week I read like 5 books, or, I like to kind of see how my reading is clumped. Then I have the title, the author's last name, and a rating. And the ratings are like nonsense. They're literally just for me. It's usually some sort of emotion or word that comes to mind after I finish the book. So sometimes it's an adjective, sometimes it's just like little heart designs. Like it just really depends. It's really just for me. Yeah, just something for me to kind of remember what I thought about this book. And what I also will note is if I read an ebook, I just kind of leave it blank. If it was an audiobook, I have a little like headphone, headset doodle that I do next to the title. And then if it was in a foreign language, I do the first initial of the language. So for example, if it was in French, I do a little F and I draw a circle around it so that I can quickly see which books I read not in English, basically. So that is essentially what I have for that. That's probably the spread that I use the most. One of the other spreads that I use still fairly frequently is my Tombow chart. So I use this especially and essentially when I'm picking out my color code for my Plan With Me's. I will kind of pull, look at this because I have what the actual color is since I did a little swatch, and I can easily find the pen. So I do use that. The other thing that I do keep track of, but that is not something I use very, very frequently, is my K-drama master watch list because I'm a nerd and I want to know. So basically I just write down what the series was, how many episodes, and like any random notes on it. And then I also will write if I've rewatched the series because I am a serial rewatcher. It's just a thing I do. So I do have that in here, but I don't really update it that frequently. But yeah, so a lot of the pages in here are like old lists of things that are no longer relevant, and I'm really just kind of trying to use up this notebook. So basically all the pages that are left, I'm pretty much going to be dedicating to reading challenges and reading trackers for as many years as I can fit in here because I really just don't use this for anything else anymore. So those are kind of the main notebooks that I use. I do also have, oh goodness, I do also have a traveler's notebook. Actually, I have multiple traveler's notebooks, but I have one that is currently still in use. And what I have in here is my current junk journal. So I do have like a little pocket with some stuff in there, and then I have, whoopsie daisy, there we go. And then I have my junk journal. So this is actually one that a pen pal made me. So I've been using this since October of 2018. You can tell how often I really use this. And this is just kind of where I put, if I collect things on trips and all of that, it's kind of like a mini little scrapbook, and I'm actually running out of pages. So I will actually need to do another one at some point soon. But as you can see, these last me for a good long while because I don't really do much in there. So, and I do have a little folder in the back with some ephemera and little goodies in there, but I've really toned down how much I keep in my traveler's notebook. One, because my junk journals always get really thick, just because I'm gluing stuff in and doing tip-ins and like all that, like you can see, like it's pretty chunky. And also because I really only ever do this stuff at home, and so I've got my bookshelf with all of my other like stickers and washi tape and ephemera, and there's really no reason to like gunk up in here because I can just turn around and get it like while I'm working kind of thing. So that is another one that I do kind of use, just not as frequently. I also have my stuff for work. So I do have my teacher bullet journal and my grade books, but I don't really count those because those are specifically dedicated for work. These are kind of the personal things that I use. So those are my main notebooks. Oh, actually, there is another one. So I almost forgot, I also do have my little sidekick. So I did a video about this one, so I figured I would include this because I do still use it. So this is a little copper A6 LUECHTTURM that I use. I've just got a, it's a hybrid Technica in 0.4 that I keep in the little pen elastic, whatever the heck it's called. And this I started in, probably in January, actually. And as you can see, I'm like about halfway through. And a lot of times what I'll do is I will keep the bookmark on my current page because I use this predominantly for grocery lists. I tend to buy kind of similar things every week at the grocery store, but if there's ever anything specific, I like to write it down. So I just kind of keep a running grocery list in here so I know when I run out of stuff and that sort of thing. I also, because I've started sewing, I do have a couple of spreads of information for specific patterns. So for example, the notions I'm gonna need, the amount of fabric, so that if I ever find a fabric that I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for that project, I actually have all the information. I don't have to try and go into, you know, my cloud to find the pattern instructions and all that kind of stuff. So this, I honestly has been lasting forever just because I really, you know, I do a grocery list a week and then I have a couple of assorted random lists that will come in periodically. I also will write down, for example, when I'm going for my haircut and I'll write down the date for the next appointment that I want to make so I don't forget, kind of thing. So I do use this. It is pretty much just like an on-the-go random list notebook, but it's pretty handy. And it lasts a really long time. You know, like I said, I'm about halfway through, so this will probably last me for another, I don't know, 6-8 months. Who even knows? Like, it might last longer. So that's another notebook I do use kind of on a daily/weekly basis. And that's kind of it. So I do have other notebooks. And if you guys can see behind me, boop, and of course I've now like done in it. So this is my shelf of kind of current notebooks. And I'll grab a couple of them and kind of show you guys some of the ones that I do consider sort of still in use, but that are more, they're not as actively used as they used to be. Okay, so I've pulled all the notebooks out just onto my lap so I can kind of show you guys. So let's take it from my home bullet journal. So I have, for a while, I was using my home bullet journal for doing like budgeting stuff and kind of taking stock during the year of how much money I had saved and all that kind of stuff. I had a couple things, for example, some KonMari spreads and what have you. And I also had my cleaning tracker. So you guys might remember this massive grid from a little while ago. And one of the things that I decided for 2019 was that having a cleaning tracker in here was not very helpful because I just don't use this notebook on a day-to-day basis. It's really kind of a big picture notebook. And so I ended up moving all of my cleaning tracker stuff onto my monthly tracker. So for 2019, I also have apartment spreads, which are kind of no longer relevant because I actually have already moved. So let's take a peek at, so this, for example, I filled in a taking stock spread. Like I did the bare bones of it and literally never filled it in. And it is August. So I think this actually was meant to be for 2019. Or no, actually it was probably meant to be for the end of 2018, if we're being perfectly honest. Like I don't even know, what? So it's been so long that I've looked in here, I actually couldn't remember. I didn't set up anything in here for 2019 except for this spread, and I still haven't filled it in. So that kind of gives you an idea as to what I use this for, which is to say, not a whole heck of a lot right now. I use this for, you know, planning my move, but since I've moved, I don't really need it. So this is definitely a notebook that for a couple of years, I found it really helpful. It was good for like big picture stuff that I wanted to be able to go back and refer to, so I didn't really want to have it in a specific bullet journal because I wanted to be able to have a couple of years in the same place. But because I'm now getting more comfortable with budgeting and because I changed sort of the setup of where I do my cleaning tracking and because I've already moved, there's just not a whole lot that I need in this notebook. So I've been holding on to it. It's still, you know, I'm only up to page like 35 in here out of 120 pages. So I still got a lot of space left in here. I'm hoping that at some point I will come up with another use for it, but for right now, I am just holding on to it. So this exists, but I don't use it a lot. The next one is this notebook. So this is a little Nuna that I got, and this is actually my Korean like vocabulary notebook. So if you guys saw my latest language studies update, you will have seen this one, and I mentioned in here that this is a big project. I kind of started doing some of the brainstorming for how I'm going to lay it out. I started doing a couple of spreads, but it is not really an actively used notebook either. I have, oh, this one's sad because I really did want to do this more. So I have a little Moleskine sketchbook because I bought the Draw Your Day book, which is right here. And at some point I am going to read it. I'm not going to be able to get that back on that shelf. I'll put it there. So at some point I do want to read it, but I've had so many other projects that have kind of taken priority that I haven't really gotten to it. And all I've done in here is I did an intro page. I did like 2 or 3 spreads, 2.5 spreads, and like haven't touched it since. So I do at some point still want to use this. I have no idea if or when I will. It's on my shelf, but unfortunately this is not something I can consider an active project. I also have a little Baron Fig Confidant. So this I used last summer when I was doing a Harry Potter lettering challenge. So I actually have all the videos up on YouTube for that. And so I've got the entire month's worth of challenges, like prompts in here. And so this is basically a lettering notebook, except that I don't really do a lot of lettering challenges anymore. I should start using this as just like a random brainstorming like lettering notebook, but I haven't. So it's like a third filled and I haven't touched it since July of 2018. So oops. See, I also have this is my little medical bullet journal. So this is one that I do still use, but again, I don't go to the doctor very often, so I don't use it a lot. So this one is, I would consider active. It's just not something that I use even every month. So that, and I do have a video coming for you guys about that. I have no idea. You might already have seen it by the time this goes up. So I have 2 other little art notebooks. So I have a little sketchbook, whoops, that is mostly just drawings of hands because, as you guys might know, that's kind of the only thing I really draw, weirdly enough. So I do have that. Don't use it all the time, but it is there. I also have a little Moleskine watercolor notebook, and this is where I was doing, so I've got a lot of other random stuff in here, but this is where I was doing my watercolor inked like ASL manual alphabet hands. I am currently up to finished N. I finished N, and I think I started this in like 2017, possibly. So another one that it's still there. I still am holding on to it. I'm still hoping at some point I might finish it. Haven't done anything with it in a while. The last thing is I do have a little traveler's notebook in a passport size, and this is kind of this one is really a travel one. So I do have a tiny little craft insert in the back that a lot of times I will bring when I go on like day trips or whatever, or just like little trips where I don't want to have my big one, and I will use this as like a travel journal, travel sketchbook. I have a little like notes one, so if I want to take notes and write down places to go or addresses or whatever, I have that in here. So this is just kind of a more compact one. And so this one I do use periodically, but again, not a whole heck of a lot. So yeah, those are my notebooks. You guys can probably tell that I have a few that I use kind of on the daily. So let's see. Oh goodness. So this is my stack of notebooks that I use kind of on a more daily, weekly, monthly basis. So I've got my bullet journal, my Projo, some lines a day, my actual journal, my language stuff, collection bullet journal, and my little sidekick. I also would semi-consider my medical bullet journal in there, even though I don't use it very often. But these are kind of the active notebooks. Followed by a stack of notebooks that are either semi-active and or basically inactive, but I'm still holding on to them in the hopes that at some point I will get back to doing these different projects. So I hope that that was clear and that gives you kind of an idea of how many notebooks I use. I know that it might still seem like a lot of notebooks, but as you guys might have noticed, like they have very specific uses and I keep them and use them for a long time sort of thing. So aside from my Projo and my bullet journal, which actually my bullet journal I've kept for basically this entire calendar year so far, all of the other ones are like multi-year projects that I am working on. So that is what I've got for you guys today. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Hey guys, so if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and are actually watching my end screen and you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a little button right there for you to do it. And if you're interested in watching some more of my videos, I have links to 2 of my older videos off to the left there, so you can check those out if you would like to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.